This game was requested by Dan Death on my Steam Curator group, thank you very much. It's a 2D top-down space exploration and strategy game coded in C++ predominantly. There's a link in the description for the GitHub site where the host files sit, and there you can see info about the game itself, and it also tells you the game is open source, so many people have had a hand in making or contributing to it, and at the time I looked it had only been 3 hours since an edit had been made on the files. For any of you coding and developing nerds, you'll understand more of this than I do, but it said most of the development is done on Windows and Linux and compiled with the SCONS building tool, a tool that appears to host a whole variety of languages. If you're interested in this stuff, then by all means get yourself on GitHub and have a rifle. The game downloaded in the space of a few minutes, which took me by surprise considering the content. The game boots in windowed mode to complete silence, and only when the loading graphic kicks in can you have a look at the menu and change it to full screen. There's a credit scroll on the left and a player card box on the right, and underneath buttons to load, start new, and for options and exit. The Preferences menu has a section for display, AI, performance, and other gameplay settings. I didn't understand what most of this applied to at the start, and there seemed to be a lot of controls like arrow keys to move, primary and secondary fire, targeting of nearest hostile, and to talk to a selected ship. You can tell a fleet to gather, fight, hold position, and there's a toggle for ammo usage. This was all over my head to begin with, but I made a note and it's a good job I did, because heads up, the game doesn't remind you about most of these controls at any given point beyond the menu, so I'd suggest referring back to it pretty regularly and trying out the keys every now and again. I set out as a new pilot. It gave me a little text story to read with an image. I worked at a textile mill but always wanted to be a pilot, so I got a pilot's license and it was time to buy a new ship. You get talked through the atmosphere of the bank that you go to take out the loan for your ship. Your starting loan is 480,000 credits, but you pay it off daily with a 0.4% daily interest rate, and after 1 year it should be fully paid off. The game calculates for you that you will accrue 434,000 extra credits worth of interest. Gross. You then get a choice of your first 3 models of ship. You can take a shuttle, which is good for passenger and cargo transport. It's not great in combat, but quick enough to outrun heavy things. The star barge is fat and heavy, and everyone wants to rob you because you're defenceless and able to carry a lot of weight. And finally, you can choose a sparrow, which you can use to either hunt pirates or become one yourself if you so fancy. But the game warns you that 2 out of 3 people who own one as their first ship lose it quickly, which I can very easily see happening since the amount of times I saw pirates in Sparrows get lasered into another dimension by giant ships was off the charts. And they hadn't even attacked those ships directly, the ships just spotted a hostile and started blasting. The shuttle was the most fair and balanced sounding one that the game didn't threaten me with imminent doom for considering buying, and it was the cheapest to boot. Each ship has a big list that pops up when you click on it, showing all sorts of ports and weights and speeds and its outfit, which totally blew my mind, so I just clicked buy. You can name it if you want, or you can let the game choose a default name, but I thought it might be fun to do my own naming, so I called my ship Rob Ritchie. Don't ask any questions, I will not provide answers. You get a few dialogue options as part of the starting story when an old man offers to take a trip with you in your new ship. His name is James, and I let him come with me because this felt like a tutorial story mission and I wasn't going to miss it. He tells you about the trading tab, where you can use up your storage space to buy commodities at low prices and sell them in other systems for profit. The game flat out tells you whether the rate you're paying for stuff is very low, medium, high, or very high, and it works out how much profit you'll get from selling them. Clever stuff, and just what a slow brain like mine needs. On each planet you also have a job board, where you can find bog standard jobs that increase in variety and nature the more you upgrade and expand your fleet. With a courier kind of ship, I was first limited into either passenger or cargo transport jobs. You have limited slots for both, and so you have to balance profit versus distance travelled versus weight. You get more money for transporting more cargo, covering more distance, or if your job has a specific deadline. The jobs themselves are where the planning and strategy aspect come in the most. Every time you jump to a new system, a day passes, and every time you land on a planet, a day passes also. This means that if you're 4 jumps away from a deadline, that deadline has to be in 4 days' time for you to make it. However, some ships are limited in the amount of jumps that they can make, so if you can only make 3 jumps but need 4 to get there, you'll have to factor in landing on a planet to refuel, so you'll lose 3 days to jumps, another day to the landing, and another to the final jump, meaning the deadline would have to be in 5 days' time, not 4. There are even more layers to the puzzle too, since not every system that you jump to has a habitable planet that you can land on, meaning you have to make sure you're not going to run out of jumps in that system, because there's no way to refuel and you will be stuck. If you've already taken other jobs that you need to cash in en route to a timed task, you may have to forfeit 1 or 2 and go back after you hit the deadline, because landing on those planets would mean adding extra days that cause you to miss the deadline and not get paid. At first, when you have your big loan to pay off, you'll hemorrhage about 2,000 credits a day. That means that every single jump you make costs you 2,000 credits. So, when you pick a job, you also have to take that into account, because you need to make a profit, and so if you spend 8,000 credits in the 4 days it takes to jump somewhere with a 6,000 credit reward, you're screwing yourself over. Below the jobs board there's a bank where you can see what you still owe and what you're paying in crew costs, since you also have to pay each crew member on your ship 100 credits a day. You can also see what size of loan you're eligible to take out. This will increase the more money you earn and lucrative your business becomes. On the bottom left is a spaceport tab. Mostly it just cycles through random people speaking to you or things you see in the spaceport, but occasionally you'll get special missions that are only available at the time you're there, including but not limited to fetching someone's dog from several systems away, or taking a bunch of drunk men across the galaxy so they can try and ride dragons on a sky planet. The next 2 tabs don't always appear on every planet, the first being the shipyard, where you can sell and buy new ships. Not all places have all types of ship, and there are a lot of variety of types that expand on the basic ones to different degrees. The combat ships could be warships, interceptors, fighters, or drones. Freight ships could be classed as heavy or light freighters, or transport ships, everything from tiny things that zip around and attack stuff to giant chunks of ships. You can buy as many ships as you want, and some ships are locked behind certain licenses, but I'll elaborate on that in a minute. The good news is that when you access the map whilst landed on a planet, you can get up a list of spacecraft and click on the one you want, and the map will highlight exactly where sells it. Or, if you click on a planet marked as having a shipyard, the game will highlight in white all of the ships that that specific planet sells. The same can be said for outfits. These are add-ons to your ship that can be bought from the outfitter. You get a whole host of things from shields, weapons, scanners for cargo and outfits that tell you what other ships are carrying or what kind of heat they're packing, and so on. Some of the big block of text on your ship description tells you how much outfit space and weapon space you have. You also have a limited number of turret mounts and gun ports. You may buy a ship that has more space for extra guns, or you might have to sell the guns it has to swap them out for new ones. If you buy missiles, you have to first buy the missile launcher or holder, and then buy the ammo separately. If you've been in a fight, the game will offer to auto-purchase ammo for you to restock. The outfitter is also where you can buy local maps, which will reveal more of the world map to you, giving you navigation paths to new systems and tell you if they're friend, foe, or empty. You can also hire more crew. You obviously have to pay them a wage if you do, but their purpose is to be bonus people able to capture new ships for you if you manage to disable and board one during combat. Every ship has a threshold where it becomes disabled if it reaches that level of damage. During combat you can disable a ship and press B to board it. The game will tell you what chance you have of capturing that ship, since the ship may still have crew on board that will defend it. Your crew members can be killed in fights against other crews whilst capturing ships. I would hazard the suggestion that this is a good way to try and build a fleet when you're taking the combat route from the start of the game, since you'll struggle in combat initially and will need as much firepower as you can get. Saying that though, it can be an utter slog trying to capture a ship, since if a disabled ship continues to be shot at, it will explode, and there are other friendly ships in the area that will support you to fight pirates, but then will also obliterate the ship that you intend to capture right as you go to do it. Thanks, but no thanks. The map system really is one of the most helpful things in this game, and whilst the UI isn't the easiest to figure out or the buttons don't seem to make too much sense to begin with, it actually turns out to be a good layout. The main map has orange dashes next to planets on the job board so that you can see where they are, and it has blue dashes for jobs that you've already accepted. The blue dashes flash for a timed job. You can map out the path to get there in the menu so that when you depart a planet you can jump straight to the new one. If you can't take a job in the job board, the game will tell you why when you click on it. It also tells you what prices things sell at for in which systems for trading. It's the arrow keys to fly around, and I didn't find it all that easy to control. You turn fairly quickly and can only really move forward. There's not that much to explore though in each system, and a lot of the time you'll fly on autopilot or be setting up to jump, unless you're in combat or navigating to a second planet within the same system, since in some places there's more than one place that you can land on in a system. To jump, you hold J until your ship rotates to the correct angle and then you release it to jump. When you have multiple ships, you can see them in the bottom left. They'll go yellow when you first hold to jump, and when they set into place they turn grey. So if one drifts away from you at any point, then you don't have to try and find it to see if it's ready. However, you have to watch out with escorts because some are much slower than you and take longer to set up. But if you press and hold J and then jump, your flagship, the one that you're controlling, will continue to jump along every piece of the chain that you've selected on your map until you either take over manually by pressing the arrow keys for control, or until it runs out of jumps or reaches the final destination. This sounds great until you realise one of your ships is 2 systems back and takes ages to catch up with you. If you have all your cargo on that ship, you can't complete a mission unless the ship is in the same system as you. You can't just land and hope for the best. The AI does try to catch up, but it doesn't always succeed. That ship may also not be able to jump as many times as you and end up stranded in a dead system, so you have to plan all of your jumps off your lowest jump capacity ship. I set out initially in the Rob Ritchie to earn my wealth in the systems, slowly expanding the size of the game map and earning enough that I could pay off my debt in 3 large 100k credit chunks and an 80k finisher, and finally I was free of debt and ready to earn. I believe I did the whole process the long way, since at some points I was eligible for bank loans in the 3 millions and I had 3 to 4 million already in my coffers, so I could have bought myself a mega warship or something. But I hate debt, and so I decided to do things the hard way and earn enough money for each ship to buy it outright so I was never in debt. Upgrades were eventually becoming mandatory, since the amount and ferocity of pirates increases the further out to the edge of the galaxy you go, and so you take on more peril in trying to travel. The Rob Ritchie was not a strong ship in combat, and eventually I needed more cargo space, so I bought a cheap starter freighter called Rob Ritchie 2. Rob Ritchie 2 was slow as anything, and I am so glad I didn't pick it as a starter ship. I was making more money through weight of deliveries, but the Rob Ritchie 2 wasn't great against pirates. I did end up dying a couple of times, but luckily when you die, the game auto-saves from your last landed planet with all the jobs that you've accepted, so you just have to depart and you're back where you were. You get a big warning alarm right before you're about to be attacked. I tried to fight but had forgotten what the fire button was, so eventually I rebound it to the spacebar. Combat is a weird thing in this game, especially with the controls, because the game encourages you selecting enemy ships by clicking with the mouse. You can do this with R, but I'd forgotten that keybind and nothing prompted me for it, so I ended up cycling through all of the ships with N to pick the one to shoot at. But the arrow keys for control favour the right hand, and being right-handed so does my mouse. I can't press the mouse and the arrow keys at the same time, and it's too unnatural to swap, but I couldn't rebind WASD because all those buttons already did stuff. Eventually I just resorted to circling and pressing N to find the target and then getting other fleet members to fight for me. Eventually, after enough burning and earning, I bought myself a new ship, an improved shuttle, the Scout, which I lovingly called Uncle Ritchie. Uncle Ritchie became my flagship, and again I kept grinding jobs. From there I then bought myself a Clipper, a better protected transporter ship, and I named it Clippy after the paperclip from Microsoft Word. To afford Clippy I had to sell Rob Ritchie too, but I wasn't too sad about that because he was slow as hell. Uncle Ritchie, Clippy and Rob Ritchie took back to the sky until eventually Rob Ritchie was killed during a skirmish with pirates. and unfortunately since I didn't notice, I landed on another planet, and a restart wouldn't bring him back, because the game already saved with him dead. In mourning, I bought a giant transporter, the Odysee, which I named Rob Ritchie's Revenge in his honour. The pirate attacks got worse in waves, and jumping away from them often causes them to follow you, meaning you have to stop and fight to make them go away. Other ships in the system help you fight, as I said, and if you end up getting shot to the point of being disabled, you end up floating dead in space. Other ships can revive you, including your other fleet members, which autopilot to help you out once the skirmish is complete. You can also hail other ships to assist you. For protection, I ended up buying a Raven, an interceptor ship, which I wanted a gnarly name for, so I called it Talon 1. Talon 1's acquirement allowed me to unlock combat jobs from the job board. These include escort missions, where the most slow and annoying freighter in the world joins your party and you have to get them and yourself not killed by pirates as you jump them somewhere by a specific deadline. Or you can get bounty missions to hunt down specific pirate ships in a system around a certain point, and then come back for the reward. Obviously, this results in more exposure to pirates, and it is absolutely guaranteed that wherever your final destination, the freighter you're protecting, is going, there are sure to be pirates that attack you the second you get out of hyperspace. Seeing as I was freighter heavy and Talon 1 was working overtime keeping my fat and slow ships alive, I avoided the combat ones as much as I could. The 4 ship kept me going for a long time until I eventually decided to compact my group a little more and pool my money into some slightly punchier ships. So I had a rejig. The dragon-riding drunk people paid me 1.4 million credits, enough for me to buy a Splinter ship which I named Master Splinter after the ninja rat from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Rob Ritchie's Revenge was sold to make way for the Rob Ritchie's Revenge 2, and Clippy was also sold for being incredibly slow to turn around and a bit redundant in combat. Rest in peace. Why did I tell you most of that? Well, it's easy when you're playing games like this to have to grind a ton of time into it, and really that's kind of what I did since I took the slowest money earning route possible, but it was very easy to do, and I managed to go through 8 different ships in a 10-hour playthrough, only 1 being a fatality. And when I was flying around in just my weak and feeble Rob Ritchie, I was seeing huge ships coming off planets and thinking that I was not going to get anywhere near that anytime soon. But then I take a look at not just how much of the world map I managed to cover and how much space I managed to unlock, but to go from Rob Ritchie to a punchy 4-ship mixed fighter and freighter team led by the very fragile Uncle Ritchie in the space of 10 hours, without using a single bank loan after the first, is a pretty good achievement, and it makes you feel that progression even further beyond is well within your grasp. The great thing about the way this game works is that you can play it any way that you want. Much like real life, you can choose to do whatever you want to do, and the game will give you the rope to hang yourself with bad financial and planning decisions. You can get a massive loan and sell all your ships to put everything into a massive bulldozer ship, and keep diving into debt to get more. Or you can be a hard-working citizen and spend time to grind to get money to buy one outright, or you can make your fleet out of 100 of tiny cheap ships that are all expendable, or you can buy a mega ship that can host other ships inside it and drift slowly around the galaxy releasing squadrons of drones to shoot everything for you. You can go all fighters, all freighters, though that would be brave considering pirates love them, or you can blend to your desire. Some ships are out of your grasp initially, whether due to price or utility to use them, since fighter-specific ships don't come with a hyperdrive and therefore can't follow you as you jump through systems. So to buy those you have to have a large vessel capable of housing them. It's exactly the same for drones. There is kind of a main plotline to the game, but it's not one that's particularly easy to find. The world in the game is separated into different factions, highlighted in different colours for their affiliation. The central planets all belong to the Republic, the orangey-brown coloured ones, and usually these planets have military ships patrolling them and scanning you and your cargo for any funny business. If you go bottom left you start reaching the free world, green highlighted, and on the right hand side you hit the Syndicate planets. Even further right you hit some yellowy ringed planets that belong to the Quarg, an alien race with backward legs that are old and tolerant of humans unless they want war in case they would stomp us like a grape. Some planets can refuse you to land on them, and some systems are labelled hostile. If you jump into a hostile system, there may be somewhere for you to land, but you'll likely be disintegrated by pirates before you get there. I found a main story quest, I think, where a militia leader from the Free Worlds asked me to scan some Republic ships and give him intel on their outfits. Basically, it seems the Free Worlds want to rebel against the Republic, but each of them are waiting for the other to take the first step. The Republic ships often broadcast a message about joining the Navy, and I believe you can actually do that since some models of spacecraft can only be bought by those with a military license. However, I tried my best going to as many spaceports on Republic planets as I could trying to initiate an encounter with a recruiter, and I couldn't find a damn thing. Maybe you have to kill pirates or something and get noticed, but either way, if you do find the main plot, you're more likely to stumble into it by accident than intentionally. Graphics-wise, the game isn't a showstopper. It's pretty simple, but it makes the right noises and everything is recognisable as what it should be. The planets do have different designs, though it would be easy to not notice if one of them was duplicated since there are tons of them, and there's a little variety in backdrops since some are full of asteroids, some clear, some with colourful stuff in the background, or like one of the Quarg worlds has a fancy ring. Every planet that you land on has a little image to show you what the surface is like for some help to immersion. The story itself is just reading text, and the most interaction you have is selecting a response. Some people might not like that, or their choice of size 2 font, but for me I could deal with that and was happy to scour through it. The game can become a little mundane at times and a little frustrating since pirate attacks seem to be random and you could be in the middle of a run somewhere and get nuked by a giant pirate ship and then have to start again when you die. Especially in the beginning when you're fighting debt in the tiny ship, you really don't stand much chance against pirates and can die pretty easily. You can also tempt fate, since with escort missions guaranteeing you to be attacked by pirates, if you dare to take 2 at once with admittedly underpowered ships like I did, you will get absolutely hammered. I died about 5 times trying to double escort and eventually had to get rid of one of them to lower the assault. When you're trying to grind money, you end up just going back and forth and trying to get as many tasks in the same area as possible, so you don't have to spend 10 years jumping all the way from one corner to the other. It's a bit more interesting in that the nature of tasks changes the more you upgrade your capacity and capability, but the default transport jobs are always there, and eventually bounty and escort missions become kind of samey as well. But you're always doing it for the possibility of upgrades to be faster, stronger, or more unkillable in battles against pirates. The only other thing I'd shoot down a tad are the default controls, since arrow keys and mouse usage at the same time is a bad idea. I get that you don't have to, but WASD has always been a comfortable control input, and you could do WASD and mouse and make it work instead of arrow keys and whatever shortcut you need your left hand to do, which might be none at all if you use N to cycle targets. You can rebind them all, but it's just so much easier to not have to do that. I would also say the game could benefit from a combat tutorial, since in the amount of time it might take for you to actually be capable in combat after you're done flying your space boulder for the first few hours, you can easily completely forget what buttons to use, and you may be able to press escape and go to the menu to look, but if you do that during a fight, you'll just respawn at a planet and it'll be wasted anyway. And there's not much time for reading written keybind notes during combat. Trust me, I tried. I'll presume that the other fleets in the game are AI and not other players, since a lot of them have default names and the pirates especially do, so any hugely unbalanced strength pirate attacks are entirely RNG and not a result of other players. Overall, it's a really good game actually. It was easy to get 10 hours out of it, and I can't often say that for games like this. Yeah, it was just plotting courses, picking jobs, doing maths for jumps, and flailing around whilst being attacked for the most part, but somehow I still got enjoyment out of being offered 6 tasks that had to be cashed in on the same planet, and then landing and receiving a huge chunk of money in my account, dreaming of the next cool ship I was going to buy, and eyeing up other fleets for ideas. The special missions at spaceports helped make it a bit more interesting, and the incentive to find the main plotline made me explore more than I might have done, and I just wanted to complete the map as much as I could as well. It's got huge space for personalization in how you want to play the game and set your fleet up, I would say that choosing a fighter and starting as a pirate would be playing the game on ultra hard mode, unless the game lowers the capability of the defending ships to prevent you from dying every 2 minutes right at the start. You grow that way through scavenging ships you disable and selling parts, but you can go freighter first as a safe option and graduate into that later. Assets wise, it's nothing special, but it is what it says on the tin, and for some semi-casual space exploration and planning, it's a great game, and its playability limit is only set by when you get bored of looking at space, executing good financial planning, and doing trip calculations. It's got helpful UI, and despite having a lot of elements that are seemingly overwhelming at first, it's not too bad at explaining itself, and you can usually get the hang of how everything works pretty quickly, so long as you're willing to dedicate to a bit of reading when you first start out. All in all, it's a solid game and time well spent, so I would give Endless Sky a 9 out of 10.